Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. What can Ed Reed do for Bethune-Cookman? If Georgia is able to capture their second consecutive national championship, does that signify a passing of the torch? What will a Miami-Florida State rivalry look like in the coming years? And how did I, Shy1419, become a Miami Hurricane fan living in the state of Mississippi? Well, before I get to that, I want to correct something that I said yesterday pertaining to Kamani McLean's ACT. I said that the ACT date was going to be February 2nd. It's actually February 12th, and National Signing Day is February 1st, right? But he still has, I believe, probably maybe another test date this particular year if he wants to opt to take it for another time, so we'll still, stay focused on that. But what can Ed Reed do for Bethune-Cookman? Now, what's interesting about this is I know it's going to be people that say it. I've already seen, some memes, going on around it because somewhat of an impact that, Coach Prime had at, Jackson State as well as for HBCUs. You bring in another Hall of Famer in Ed Reed, who he doesn't necessarily have the same personality as Coach Prime, but he may have, similar aspirations. Well, not similar aspirations, but similar business connections, business dealings that could potentially help Bethune. Now, I don't have any boots on the ground in reference to Bethune, but I have heard that there will be some challenges. There are going to be some challenges. So hopefully no one that's thinking logically will sit up here and say, well, Coach Prime was able to, win the SWAC title 2 consecutive years ago playing the Celebration Bowl, and that's the same standard that Ed Reed should step in the door with. No, he shouldn't step in the door with that particular standard. I don't think Coach Prime stepped in the door with that particular standard. He just went in and defined or set the standard, or he went and set the bar. So it'll be interesting to see what Coach Reed does. Obviously, there's a lot of rumblings, and I don't really want to address, some of the things that I've heard in reference to his role at the University of Miami, or lack thereof a role at the University of Miami. I just want to say hats off to him. He made it abundantly clear. Multiple people have made it abundantly clear that Ed Reed could potentially, well, not potentially, but Ed Reed was a guy that basically wasn't going to settle for anything less than a coordinator position. And I want to be one of the first to apologize to Coach Reed because I was one of the ones that looked at it from the standpoint of, man, just because he was great in the NFL, I bought into that stereotype, that stigma of the saying of, well, just because you were a great player, that doesn't mean that you're going to be a great coach. That doesn't mean you're going to be a great leader of men. And so I fell into that. And so I, hook, line, and sinker, I said, hey, Ed Reed should, bust his chops at being a position coach, see if he actually can recruit. And then maybe 2 or 3 years later down the road, if we have an opening, hey, give him a defensive coordinator position. But after really sitting back and looking at it and really looking at what, Coach Prime was able to do, it really, it just kind of dawned on me that, at the end of the day, when you have certain people that are just special, you know what I mean? Whatever my glass ceiling for you, that is irrelevant, right? You only you know what it is that you can do. And so obviously Coach Reed has glowing reviews from the likes of Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Bill Belichick. Obviously, Jim Leonard, defensive coordinator of Wisconsin, said Ed Reed taught him so much, and we see how well the defense is played at the University of Wisconsin. So it'll be very, very interesting to see what Coach Reed can do in terms of putting a staff together. I know Rex Ryan was a guy that really lobbied for him. Rex Ryan actually gave him his first, job. So it'll be interesting to see if he would get Rex Ryan to come on as a coach or as a defensive analyst or something of that particular nature to, bring it home. But what I think that Ed Reed will do for Bethune, I do think Ed Reed will bring a solid foundation in as long as the administration is lockstep and barrel with Coach Reed. I don't know what he's gonna do on the recruiting trail. I can't talk about the tangible things such as recruiting, such as being out front and center, all that stuff like that. I can't speak about that, but from an intangible standpoint, I do think Coach Reed is going to bring a toughness. I do think Coach Reed is going to bring a focus. I do think he's going to do those particular things, but I'm not expecting for him to change the world in year one. But I know there were some players in Bethune that were exercising to go into the portal, and I think some of them rescinded that and they want to come back and be coached under Coach Reed. So it'll be interesting the next couple of days to see how he puts his particular staff together. And I mean, it's a great area. He's in Daytona Beach, so it's not like he's in an area that is not attractive to potential prospects. Obviously, you're going to have guys who fall out from Florida, fall out from Miami, fall out from Florida State, FAU, FIU, and they may opt, and as well as USF, and they may opt to say, well, hey, you know what, instead of leaving the state, let's go over here to Bethune. Let's, obviously FAMU does their thing. So it's going to be interesting to see. So kudos to Coach Reed. You already know the fan base is behind you, and hey, hopefully you'll do a good job. So moving on. Saturday, we have the semifinal games. We have TCU versus Michigan. We have Ohio State versus the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia Bulldogs are on a quest to be repeat national champions, and I'll go ahead and answer the question early. If Georgia is able to repeat, I do think the torch, I'm not going to say it's fully in Kirby's hand. I do think he's holding on to the torch, but Nick is not letting it go. It's not a full passing because Nick is not going out without a fight. They just signed a #1 recruiting class. They're looking to add more guys to that. Obviously, they're probably going to be selective in the portal as well. So it's really going to be, quite interesting to see what's going to transpire. But I do think that Georgia's in a great position. I asked a question on Coach Hayes' show a while back, and I said, or maybe it was Wholesome. It was one of the two, but shout out to both guys. And I asked the question, I said, can Georgia maintain this level of dominance and they don't have a top-tier quarterback? No shots to Stetson Bennett, but it just you kind of stop and think, well, hey, if they had went with Justin Fields over Jake Fromm when that particular situation was there, or had they even went with the quarterback that Jacob Eason, the quarterback that was there when Kirby got the job, but he ended up transferring to Washington. So it's interesting, but they've been able to do it. Probably have one of the best, if not the best, interior lineman in Jalen Carter playing. So they're very talented. They're very talented. But it was one question that I saw, or something that I seen people discussing, and I first heard about this on Minister Sports with Zach Smith, and they were saying that since Georgia was the #1 team, but they weren't necessarily saying it was other people, they were just bringing it to light, where some people said Georgia should have had the ability to pick who they wanted in the semifinal game, because it seems that Michigan is getting off, because they're playing TCU, and Georgia is playing Ohio State, which from a talent, from a composite standpoint, Ohio State is a top 5 team. TCU is not. And Georgia should have had the ability to choose who it was that they wanted to play. So I'm just sitting up here thinking to myself, I said, well, what are they choosing from? Are they choosing from, I don't know who ended up being rounding out the top 8 or top 6. I know Alabama was there, Ohio State was there, I think USC was there, I believe. So are you telling me Georgia should have the ability to pick who it is that they want? Because if that's the case, then Michigan should have the ability to choose who they want to. They both went undefeated. I don't have the schedules sitting directly in front of me, but Ohio State Michigan went through a tough schedule as well. Beat a very, very good Ohio State team. So I don't necessarily know, but it should be a good game. I do think just listening to some things, Georgia is not impenetrable, but I'm not here to talk or say anything about anybody's team because we have our own issues that we have to address. But, with that being said, I do think that the torch won't be fully passed, But you could make a case that, we could be in a situation where Georgia is becoming the face of college football, and the national championship or the playoffs are going to end up running through Athens, Georgia, right? So that's that. So moving on. Florida State was able to win the bowl game yesterday. I wasn't able to watch the game because I was working, to be honest. I didn't even know the bowl game was on. But they were able to pull it out against an Oklahoma team. And the game was a little bit closer than many people expected, but I did see someone say something that I didn't think about, and that was that, Brent Venables has experience coaching against Coach Mike Norvell. So from a defensive standpoint, they should have been prepared for what it is that Florida State was going to present. And so I said, okay, I didn't even think about that. So, that's interesting. So Jordan Travis has announced that he's going to return to Florida State. Obviously, we're loading up in the portal as well as a top 5 recruiting class. So what is this rivalry going to look like? Now, I know many Miami fans are saying, hey, this is Florida State's 2017 type of deal where they have a good season and then it falls off. They can't continue to go in the portal and fill holes and all that type of stuff right there. But I'm going to say this. I don't know that. I don't know if Florida State cannot continue to go in the portal to fill in holes. I don't know that. I don't know if Florida State can be weakened by not being as strong recruiting as they need to be. Because I can say the same thing for our team. Just because we're recruiting well, that doesn't mean that the guys that we're recruiting all are going to pan out. Like I said, the law of averages say that only 7 to 10 guys are going to pan out. So you sign a class of 30 guys, that's 20, I'm not going to call it Jags, but those are 20 guys that didn't reach their potential, So I'm not, it's too early to say whether or not what could happen, but I just like to look at things, from an objective standpoint, that we say Florida State can't do this, and they very well might be able to do it. And just because we're excelling at NIL, just because we're excelling at recruiting, that does not put us in a better position, because at the end of the day, you still got to coach the talent, right? You still got to coach the talent. And from a particular standpoint, Oklahoma probably was a more talented team. They were 6-6, but probably from a composite standpoint, Florida State beat a team that they were more talented than. Regardless of record, right? So, but from a future standpoint, man, I want Florida State to be good, because over the last couple of years, we as Miami fans, as well as Florida State fans, from a collective standpoint, and I'm not going to say all Florida State fans feel that way, but I do think some do feel this way, or we've watched Alabama and LSU snatch our glory in terms of being the most talented rivalry. I said that in one of my other videos. I'm not going to say it's the greatest rivalry. I'm not going to say it's the best rivalry. I'm going to say it's the most talented rivalry, right? And when I say talented, I don't think Ohio State, Michigan can say that. I don't think Alabama, Auburn can say that. I don't think Texas A&M, Texas can say that. Texas, Oklahoma can say that. Alabama, Tennessee. They can lay claim to, well, we got the best rivalry. No one but Miami and Florida State can say without argument the most talented rivalry in college football history, right? And so it's time to get back to that, man. And so hopefully Coach Norvell does well next year as well as the year after that. Hopefully we get our stuff together, because in the last 3 years this rivalry has taken a turn that many of us didn't suspect it to take. And that turn is, we got 2 games where we blew them out in 2020. Then they turned around this year and they blew us out. Obviously, last year's game was a game that was one that was somewhat reminiscent of some games that we had in the past in terms of just the competitive nature of the game. Just throw the record out the window, right? So hopefully we get back on the right track of things and we can move forward, right? So how did I become a Miami Hurricane fan? I live in Mississippi, right? And it's so funny, because right before I started recording this video, the guy who actually hooked me up or introduced me to the Miami Hurricanes, I just got through talking to him, right? And I was like, man, it's just so kind of surreal, because I was going to talk about this topic on the video today, so it was good to catch back up with him. But the guy he's the father of one of my friends. I look at him like a little brother, not the father, but his son. And so I remember one day I was going over to his house and we were playing NCAA football. And my relatives, my uncles, my dad and stuff, they were NFL guys. So I was mostly watching 49ers and Cowboys games. So for me to play NCAA, that was just something, unique. And so we were playing NCAA. And he told me, he said, man, you need to play with the Hurricanes. And he said, man, if you're good enough and you get to high school, you need to go play for Miami Hurricanes, man. The boys bad. The boys good, you know what I mean? And so that was my first, introduction to college football. Even though I'm in a state with Ole Miss, Mississippi State, the HBCUs, all that stuff, but Miami was the team that I was first introduced to, and so I'm not gonna say I'm forever indebted to him, but I'm just thankful that he could have brought that to me, because later on in life, when I got older and got into high school, and guys started saying, okay, this is my favorite team, and I was like, well, I like Miami Hurricanes, right? And Wiz McGahee is my favorite player. So with that being said, man, like, share, subscribe, and comment to the video, man. And as always, man, it's all about the you.